Strings are another one of the most fundamental data types and also one of the most useful. As strings can hold virtually any textual data, you'll find yourself using them constantly. You'll use them to hold names, IDs, URLs, and even more abstract kinds of data. Now, as I said in the previous video, strings are defined by enclosing any text in single or double quotes. There's no difference between these two. Of course, you need to end the string with the same type of quote that you began it with. But there is one instance where the difference between these quotes becomes very important. Say you wanted to use single or double quotes within your string. For example, say you wanted to make a string with the line, Joe says, quote, hello. Well, let's jump over to the console and try wrapping that in double quotes. You do that and you get a syntax error, unexpected identifier. What happened is that when JavaScript saw the opening double quote, it started to define a string. Then it ran into the next double quote just before hello and took that to mean the end of the string. Then it sees this word hello just sitting there, not in any quotes, and that's not the name of any JavaScript keyword or variable, so it reported an error. So there are two solutions here. One is that if you need to use any double quotes in your string, define the string with single quotes, like so. And that works fine. Likewise, if you need to use single quotes in your string, define it with double quotes. This also goes for instances when you use a single quote as an apostrophe. Trying to do that with single quotes, the apostrophe in the word Joe's signals the end of the string. The solution is to use double quotes to wrap this string. Now, there's another solution, which is to escape the quotes. You escape a character by putting a backslash in front of it. The backslash tells JavaScript not to process the next character in the usual way. It escapes the usual treatment as something that starts and ends a string, and just gets seen as another character. If your string contains single and double quotes, this is the only solution. For example, if my string is Joe's message is hello, here I can't enclose the string in single or double quotes because it contains both. So what you do is choose one and escape the ones you chose in the string. Let's try that on the console. I'll choose double quotes to make the string, which means I'll need to escape the double quotes around the word hello. And that works. You can escape other characters as well. Some escape characters have special meanings. For example, \n is the new line character. So if you type one line \n another line, that will output as if you pressed the return or enter key at that point in the string. Another common escape character is the \ itself. Say you need to display a Windows file path, which are specified with backslashes. Well, if you type something like this, Windows \files, it prints Windows ILs. What it's doing is trying to escape the F character, which actually defines a form feed signal. And this is meaningless in the console, so it just gets ignored. But now your F is gone. So what you do is escape the escape. The first backslash is the escape character, which allows the second backslash to be treated as simple text, escaping its normal functionality. Okay, now you know more than enough about how to create strings. What can you do with them? Well, you can add smaller strings together to make bigger strings. This is called concatenation. You can use the plus operator to add strings together. Note the space after hello. Concatenating strings adds the characters together exactly as you write them. It doesn't add anything. So if you want a space between the two words you're concatenating, make sure to include a space. Let's try this in the console. I'll make a string in one variable and another string in another variable, and then concatenate them. Now remember that with numbers there are various operators that also assign, such as plus equal for add and assign, minus equal for subtract and assign, etc. Well, most of these don't make much sense for strings, but plus equals does. It basically appends a string onto an existing string. So if I say language equals Java, and then language plus equals script, language has now become JavaScript. Now one more word on concatenation. You can also take advantage of coercion while concatenating. Say you have a function that generates a user number and you want to combine that with a string to make a user name. If I define num as 1234 and name as user and username as name plus num, JavaScript wants to concatenate a string to a string, but it sees a number instead. So it coerces that number into a string so that it can concatenate it. Okay, so now you can use concatenate to create long strings from short ones. What about the opposite? Subtracting shorter strings from longer ones. JavaScript actually has two functions for extracting substrings. In possibly the worst naming scheme ever, they're called substring and substr. They do exactly the same thing, but in slightly different ways. Both substring and substr let you extract a sequence of characters from within a string. Substring lets you pass in two numbers. The first number is the position of the first character in the substring you want. You should know that string characters are numbered starting with 0. The second number is the position of the first character that you don't want in your substring. Or to put it another way, it points to the position after the last character you want in your substring. I know that's a bit confusing. Anyway, here you can see language substring 04. This starts with character 0, the first character, which is J, and ends just before character 4, which is S. So you get Java. Let's try another one live. I'll define language as JavaScript, then say language substring 410. This starts with character 4, S, and ends just before character 10. Now here there is no character 10, but this gives you a string up to character 9, which is T, so you get script. Actually, if you want a substring from any character to the last character in the string, you can just leave off the second number. So language substring 4 also gives you script. Now substr does the same thing. The first number is still the first number of the substring, but the second number specifies how many characters you want to get back. So language substring 04 gives you Java. It starts at 0 and returns a string with 4 characters. Let's try that out with some other numbers. Language substring 25 gives you a 5-character string, starting with the third character V. And if you leave out the second number, substr works exactly the same as substring, giving you a string from whatever character you specified to the end. There are other little details about the way these two functions work, but I'll leave you to explore that on your own. Another useful function if you just want a single character out of a string is the char_at function. Just pass a number to it, and it will give you the character at that position in the string. Let's try some of those in the console. 0 is J, 1 is A, 2 is V, and etc. Finally, say you want to know whether or not a string contains a specific substring or a particular character. That's what index_of is for. Pass in the string or character that you're looking for, and it will return the position where that string starts. For example, here, language index_of rip returns 6. This tells us that starting at position 6, you'll find the word rip in JavaScript. If the substring or character does not exist in the larger string, this will return -1. Armed with this knowledge, we can prove, once and for all, that there is no I in team. Now you can use index_of with not equals -1 to see whether or not a string contains another string. I'll create term1 and term2 variables that contain strings, and I'll check term2 index_of term1. If that returns any number other than -1, then term1 exists in term2. In other words, if the result does not equal -1, then I found a match. I'll just log the results in the appropriate if or else block and test that. Then I can change term1. And now index_of should return -1 and the else code block will execute instead. And that's exactly what happens. Now there are lots of other functions that you can perform on strings. Again, I don't expect you to completely memorize everything I've covered here, but you should come away with a solid knowledge of what strings are and a pretty good idea of some of the ways you can manipulate them. In Lesson 2, you'll see how to create your own functions to add custom actions and behaviors, and I'll introduce you to some more advanced data types that will allow you to store collections or lists of values, and create your own data types that are composed of various values. At the end of the next lesson, you'll be able to write some real programs instead of those small snippets you've been restricted to so far. But before moving on, you have a few assignments to do. Assignment 1 is the quiz that you'll find on the page for this lesson. There will be a quiz for each lesson. This will help you see how well you understood the lesson and maybe point out some areas to go over again. Assignment 2. Go to a website of your choice, open the Developer Tools to the Sources tab, find some JavaScript files. Look for some variables, strings, numbers, and an if statement. Don't worry if you don't understand what the code is doing, just try to see what you can recognize. Sometimes the source will be minified. This means that all the extra spacing and formatting has been removed to make it smaller and harder to read. At the bottom of the Sources tab, you'll see a button like this. This will attempt to format the code to make it more readable for you. Assignment number 3. Check the console on a number of web pages. Do you see any errors or warnings? Can you find any log statements that a developer might have left in the code? Assignment 4. Choose a code editor that you'll use for the rest of this course. Make sure it's installed and that you're familiar with how to use it. Unless you have one that you're already very familiar and comfortable with, I suggest Sublime Text. Create a project that has an HTML file that loads a script file. Have that script file successfully log a message to the console. Assignment 5. Pick some topic that was covered in Lesson 1 that you didn't completely understand, or would like to know more about. Do some personal research to understand that topic more fully. I highly suggest the Mozilla Developer Network for this purpose.